I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you're waiting in line. And I mean, not the line at your local coffee shop.
Right. A much more stressful line.
Exactly. You are standing in this crowded, really noisy hospital waiting room, and your chest feels a little tight.
Which is terrifying because you might actually be experiencing a hidden, like, life-threatening medical emergency.
Yeah, but you are stuck behind 50 other people. And why are you behind them? Simply because those 50 people who might just have minor scrapes or, need a routine prescription refill, they just happened to walk through the clinic doors before you did.
It's just a terrifying scenario when you really try to put yourself in those shoes.
Hmm.
I mean, you're physically in the one place that can save your life, but structurally, you're completely invisible to the system.
And that feeling of being invisible in a medical queue is exactly what we are tackling today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a big topic.
It really is. Our mission for this conversation is to unpack this completely fascinating research paper by 𝗏𝗏 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 and 𝗏𝗏.
Yeah, and the title is a bit of a mouthful. It's called Agentic AI for Clinical Urgency Mapping and Queue Optimization in High-Volume Outpatient Departments.
Yeah, it is a dense title for sure. But the core idea, it basically challenges everything about how hospitals actually function.
Absolutely. We're looking at this proposal to replace the sort of static, blind waiting room with an active multi-agent AI system. It essentially, it rewires how we even perceive medical urgency.
Right, and the mission of this deep dive is to explore how integrating that technology, it doesn't just, speed up a hospital line. It actually transforms a waiting room into a totally active, life-saving environment.
Which is so needed. But to really grasp the magnitude of what this AI is doing, we have to look at the specific environment it was actually designed to fix.
Yeah, we have to move from this abstract concept of waiting in line to the very stark reality of outpatient departments, or OPDs, in India.
And the scale of that healthcare system, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. India serves over 1.4 billion people.
Wow.
Yeah. And for the vast majority of citizens, the OPD is their primary point of contact with any medical care. Honestly, sometimes it's their only point of contact.
Right. And the researchers, they base their simulation on a government district hospital in 𝗏𝗏, which is a tier 2 city in Madhya Pradesh.
Exactly. And we're talking about facilities that handle this crushing volume of anywhere from like 200 to 8,000 patients per session.
8,000. That's just wild. So managing that human flood currently relies on the first come, first served system, right? An FCFS?
Yep. You walk in, you get a token with a sequential number, and you just sit and wait your turn.
Which, think about it, like taking a ticket at a bakery. At a bakery, waiting sequentially for a croissant is totally fine.
Right. Nobody dies waiting for a pastry.
Exactly. The person who wanted a baguette before you get served first and everyone goes home happy. But applying that bakery logic to a hospital is just absurd.
It really is.
Like, waiting for a defibrillator behind someone who just needs a Band-Aid isn't just inefficient. It can literally be fatal.
And that's the core problem. Under this FCFS system, someone with chest pain radiating down their left arm, they are treated identically to someone who just, needs a routine health check.
Which just feels so wrong. Did the researchers look at the actual human cost of that, like, bakery logic?
Oh, they did. The data they pulled exposes how bad it is. The national average wait time in these clinics, it sits between 37 and 75 minutes.
Okay, that's already a long time to wait if you're sick.
But it gets worse. When you look closer at specific studies from Indian tertiary hospitals, patients can wait up to 2 solid hours.
2 hours? Wow.
And the payoff for those 2 hours of waiting, it's an average of just 3 minutes of actual consultation time with a physician.
You wait 2 hours for 3 minutes of care. That's just a broken system. And during those 2 hours, the system knows absolutely nothing about how sick you actually are.
Nothing at all. Human sorting is just completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of bodies coming through the door.
But wait, don't some hospitals try to fix this with triage nurses? Like someone who checks you at the door?
They do, yeah. Some use static, rule-based triage systems where a nurse assesses you and puts you in a priority bucket.
Yeah.
But the researchers point out a massive flaw there.
Which is what?
These systems operate in a clinical vacuum. They assess you exactly once, based solely on what you say is wrong in that exact moment.
Right, and then you're just sent to sit down and wait again.
Exactly. Nothing updates.
But that means we need a machine that doesn't just sort, but one that actually thinks and adapts over time.
And that's where the researchers went beyond just writing a theoretical paper complaining about the problem.
Yeah, they actually built something.
They built a full 6-component agentic AI framework. And they used Anthropic's Claude Sonnet as the core reasoning engine.
Okay, the term agentic there, that's really crucial to their solution, isn't it?
Very much so. This isn't just a simple, single sorting algorithm. It's a whole architecture made of specialized digital agents that work together.
So let's break that down. Component 1 targets the very first bottleneck, right? The registration desk.
Right. Currently, manual transcription at the desk takes about 5.5 minutes per patient.
Which adds up incredibly fast with thousands of people.
Exactly. So the AI proposes a multilingual voice capture system, and the goal is to cut that time down to 3.3 minutes.
And that multilingual aspect, I find that fascinating, especially when you think about the linguistic diversity in a place like Madhya Pradesh.
It's vital. The system is modeled to understand Hindi, English, and even regional languages like Bengali.
Because it has to capture, like, colloquial descriptions of pain, translate them, map them to actual clinical terminology, and log them all in just over 3 minutes.
Yep. It severely relieves that immense pressure right at the front door.
Okay, so once that info is captured, where does it go?
It hits components 2 and 3. Here, a large language model predicts the severity of the patient's condition.
Oh, so it categorizes them.
Right. It puts the patient into one of 4 World Health Organization-aligned levels. So that's critical, high, medium, or low.
Got it.
And at the same time, it actively matches the patient to a specific physician based on the doctor's specialty, their current workload, and, just their general availability.
That is super smart. And all of that data then funnels into component 5, which is the orchestrator agent.
The brain of the operation, basically.
Right. The orchestrator is the one deciding exactly who gets up from their chair next. And okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Sure.
Because if I'm sitting in that waiting room, I want to know exactly how this machine is deciding whether I get to see a doctor or if I have to just keep staring at the wall.
It's completely transparent in the paper. The researchers actually lay out the explicit mathematical formula the orchestrator uses.
Yeah, and the math reveals so much about their clinical priorities. It calculates this dynamic priority score for every single patient.
Do you have the formula there?
I do. So priority equals 0.45 times urgency plus 0.20 times acuity plus 0.20 times weight factor plus 0.15 times load score.
Right. So let's look at what that means. 45% of your priority is pure medical urgency. Like, are you actively dying?
Which is almost half the score.
Yeah. Then another 20% is acuity, which is basically the severity of the symptoms you're physically presenting with.
And the tension between those two variables is really interesting to me. Urgency is weighted more than double acuity.
Exactly. It implies the AI cares far more about an invisible, life-threatening condition than a highly visible, painful, but non-lethal injury.
That distinction is just so vital in emergency medicine.
100%. Think of a patient with a deeply lacerated finger. That's high acuity. There's blood, it's obvious, there's severe pain.
Right, everyone in the waiting room can see they're hurt.
But then compare that to a patient experiencing the early stages of an aortic aneurysm. They might just complain of a vague stomach ache.
So that's low acuity, but incredibly critical urgency.
Precisely. The AI is programmed to prioritize the silent killer over the loud distraction.
Which is amazing. Then you have those last two variables making up the remaining 35%. So 20% of the score is the weight factor.
This is crucial for fairness, because if a system only prioritizes the sickest people, someone with a minor issue might literally wait forever as new, sicker patients constantly arrive.
They call that Q starvation, right? So the weight factor is basically a mathematical cap preventing that starvation.
Yeah. The longer you sit there, your priority score just slowly creeps up, guaranteeing you eventually get seen regardless of your symptoms.
That's a huge relief. And then the final 15% is the load score.
Right, which prevents individual doctors from burning out. The AI checks to see which specialists are drowning in patients and which actually have an opening.
So it's actively balancing the clinical workload across the entire department. It's just an incredibly elegant mathematical balance.
It is.
But we definitely hit a massive speed bump here, because having a brilliant priority formula is completely useless if the initial symptoms the patient reports are misleading.
Oh, absolutely. That is perhaps the single most dangerous failure mode in these outpatient departments.
Oh, so?
Well, in Indian government hospitals, patient records are typically paper-based, and they are incredibly fragmented.
So they don't just pull up your file on a computer?
Rarely. When a patient returns to the clinic, their medical history is frequently just unavailable. So the doctor is essentially treating a stranger every single time.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster, which leads us perfectly to component 6 of the AI framework, which is the patient memory system.
This is where things get really interesting. To test how important history actually is, the researchers created a simulation of 368 synthetic patients.
And they didn't just give them random symptoms, right?
No, they gave 120 of them longitudinal health records that matched the actual disease burden of Madhya Pradesh.
So we're talking about underlying conditions like diabetes, hypertension, and COPD.
Exactly. And the simulation results for this memory system are just terrifying when you realize what the old FCFS system was missing every single day.
The paper has this table, table 1, that gives these visceral specific examples. Let's talk about the patient they named Ramesh V.
Right, Ramesh, he's a 62-year-old male who walks in complaining of a, quote, mild headache and some dizziness.
Okay, so under the old first-come, first-served system, Ramesh just gets a ticket. At face value, he is a low-urgency patient. He goes straight to the back of the line.
But the AI's patient memory system, it scans his longitudinal record and sees that Ramesh had a TIA, a mini-stroke, 6 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how deceptively mild symptoms can completely mask hidden urgency.
Because the AI instantly realizes that for a stroke survivor, a mild headache and dizziness is a massive red flag.
It escalates Ramesh to a critical stroke warning immediately.
They give another example, too, with a patient named 𝗵𝗆𝗆. She's a 35-year-old female presenting with mild abdominal pain.
And again, at face value, she seems totally fine to sit and wait with the other low-urgency patients.
But the AI remembers she has a high-risk pregnancy and a previous cesarean section.
Exactly. So her mild pain, it could actually be a catastrophic rupture. The AI bypasses the queue entirely and escalates her to critical.
That is life-saving. I mean, giving the AI the ability to remember medical history, it allowed the system to catch an average of 11.9 additional hidden critical cases per session.
Nearly 12 people per day who would have been just sitting in the low-priority queue with ticking time bombs inside them, all saved just by having historical context.
Okay, I have to push back on the feasibility of this, though.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
This simulation sounds amazing, truly, but as we just established a minute ago, these government hospitals are swimming in fragmented paper records.
Right.
So how on earth does the AI know Ramesh had a stroke if his file is sitting in a cardboard box in a rural clinic 50 miles away?
It's a great point, and the researchers explicitly acknowledge that hurdle in the paper. This AI system, it cannot work magic without data.
So it's kind of stuck without a digital upgrade.
Yeah, realizing this full potential depends entirely on the nationwide adoption of India's ABHA system.
That's the 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆 health account, right?
Exactly. It's a massive government initiative to digitize and centralize longitudinal health records across the country. Without that digital infrastructure, the AI remains pretty much blind to a patient's history.
Okay, so the technology is essentially ready, but it's waiting for the infrastructure to catch up.
Precisely.
But even having perfect medical history only solves the problem at the exact moment the patient walks through the door, right?
Right, because biology is messy.
Exactly. What happens when a patient who looked totally stable at check-in starts crashing 20 minutes later while they're just sitting in the waiting room chair?
And that transitions the system from merely being a smart sorter to being an active guardian. This is component 4, adaptive queue optimization.
Because in traditional static triage, you're assessed once at the door. If you seem fine, you're marked a low urgency, and you wait.
But human biology isn't static. People deteriorate.
I like to think of static triage as taking a single Polaroid snapshot of a boiling pot of water. At the exact moment you take the picture, the water might look relatively still.
That's a great way to put it.
But 5 minutes later, it's boiling over, and you don't know because you aren't looking at the pot anymore. The Agentic AI is more like leaving a continuous digital thermometer in the water.
Exactly. The AI recalculates the priority score for the entire queue every 5 minutes.
Every 5 minutes, for hundreds of people.
Yep. It is actively hunting for something the researchers call urgency drift.
Urgency drift.
Yeah, which is basically the detection of patients whose conditions are actively worsening while they're just sitting there waiting.
And did they find a lot of that in the simulation?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In their 30-run simulation, the system detected an average of 235.6 drift events per session.
Over 200 times a day.
Over 200 times a day that a patient needed to be bumped up the list because they were getting sicker right there in the chair.
Wait. If they tested this in a simulation, the AI couldn't actually see a patient sweating or like clutching their chest in a physical chair.
No, of course not.
So it must be relying on some kind of statistical probability of them getting sicker over time, right?
Yes, and the researchers are completely transparent about that limitation in their current model. Because it's a computer model, it essentially rolls a digital 100-sided die every 5 minutes.
To see if they get worse?
Right, to see if a patient worsens based on their initial category. In the paper, they call this using stochastic deterioration probabilities.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But, for instance, the model assumes a high urgency patient has a 1.5% chance of deteriorating every single 5-minute check.
Okay, so it's using statistics to guess the drift for the sake of the test, rather than actually measuring a physical human being.
For the simulation, yes. But for a real-world rollout, their plan is way more advanced. They plan to integrate real-time IoT devices.
Like smart bands and stuff.
Exactly. Wearables that measure vital signs. And they'd feed those into standard early warning scores, like the NINI-WS2 protocol.
Oh, wow. So that way the AI detects an actual drop in blood oxygen or a spike in heart rate in real time.
Yes, and it automatically reprioritizes the queue based on hard physiological data, not just statistics.
That is wild. Let's look at what happens when this entire machine is actually running. I mean, it listens in multiple languages, pulls your hidden medical history, matches you to the right doctor, and recalculates the line every 5 minutes.
And a lot of moving parts.
It is, but the results section of this paper reveals a massive, almost uncomfortable logistical trade-off when you compare it to the old system.
Yeah, the successes are profound, but there's a cost. Under the old first-come, first-served system, the average wait time for a critical patient was 36.1 minutes.
Which is terrifying for a critical emergency.
And purely by blind luck, only 30.8% of critical patients were seen within the golden window of 10 minutes.
So dropping that critical wait time down, it changes the survivability odds entirely.
It really does. When they turned on the Agentic AI in the simulation, the critical wait time plummeted to 7.5 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Suddenly, 94.2% of critical patients are being seen within that 10-minute window.
That is just an incredible shift in patient safety. I mean, that's life and death right there.
But the researchers observed something else happening to the waiting room, something they call Dynamic urgency recomposition.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, the AI literally changed the shape of the queue. Remember those 11.9 hidden critical cases?
Yeah, the ones with the hidden history.
Right. It also found a huge number of hidden high urgency cases. It took roughly 111 patients who were originally classified as low urgency at face value, and it upgraded them.
Upgraded them because of their history or their symptoms?
Exactly. And that causes a severe cascading effect.
Yeah.
Because the AI is so aggressive and so accurate at finding sick people, the high urgency population in the waiting room just quintupled.
Quintupled?
Yes. It went from a baseline of 36 recognized patients to approximately 178 patients.
Wow. And the AI didn't spawn more doctors, obviously. It just changed who was at the front of the line.
Precisely. And because the AI uncovered the true burden of urgent cases, the people who were truly actually low urgency.
Like the ones who just needed a basic refill or had a minor issue.
Right. Those patients saw their wait times absolutely skyrocket. Under the old system, they waited about 86 minutes. Under the AI, they waited 142.4 minutes.
142 minutes. That is almost 2.5 hours for routine care.
It's a long time.
And because there are so many of those low-urgency patients, the overall average wait time for the entire clinic actually went up to 77 minutes.
Which sounds bad on paper if you're just looking at averages.
Right. So what does this all mean? We've built this super advanced AI, and the average person actually ends up waiting longer.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
The researchers are basically forcing a conversation about what fairness really means in a medical setting. I mean, is it fair to make a daily wage worker lose 2.5 hours of their day for routine care just because they aren't actively dying?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really challenges our reliance on simple equality. First come, first served feels fair because it is strictly egalitarian. Everyone suffers equally in the line.
Right. It's democratic suffering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the paper argues that FCFS is fair but unsafe. The Agentic AI explicitly prioritizes safety over wait time equality.
So it abandons the illusion of fairness.
Yes, to guarantee survival. Yes, the routine patient waits much longer, but the system is no longer gambling with the lives of the stroke survivor or the high-risk pregnancy patient.
It essentially trades convenience for safety.
It does. Furthermore, it exposes a much deeper systemic truth about public health infrastructure.
What do you mean?
The AI proves that these hospitals aren't just crowded. They are fundamentally understaffed for the true volume of high-urgency care that exists in the population.
Oh, because before the AI, all that urgency was just invisible.
Exactly. The system assumed only a small fraction of patients were highly urgent. The AI revealed the real number is massively higher, and you can't fix a staffing crisis if you can't even see it.
So the AI didn't break the queue. It just turned the lights on so administrators could actually see how overwhelmed the clinical staff already were.
Bingo. It gives hospital networks the hard, empirical data they need to advocate for more specialist staffing because they can finally prove the true acuity of their patient population.
That is just brilliant. It really is a proof of concept for how AI is evolving. It's moving from being just a static tool, like a search engine or a spelling checker, into an active, vigilant agent.
We no longer have to accept this clinical vacuum where a patient is just a numbered token. We actually have the computational power now to treat every patient as an individual with a history.
All while relentlessly watching for deterioration to prevent catastrophic human failures. It really is a glimpse into the future of how systems will care for us.
It gives you a lot of hope.
It does. And bringing this all back home for you listening right now, we've just seen how an AI can reveal that a hospital's supposedly routine waiting room is actually full of hidden, life-threatening emergencies.
Emergencies that were masked by a broken system of sequential equality.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, what other invisible crises are hiding in the first-come, first-served queues of our everyday lives?
It raises a really important question about how we organize society as a whole.
Think about emergency 911 dispatch lines, disaster relief logistics, or honestly, even how we allocate basic social services. If we just assume that simple sequential equality is the same thing as fairness, who are we inadvertently putting at risk while they wait patiently in line?
Something to think about next time you pull a ticket.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.